Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the episode 7 of ARINGO's Coffee Chat series. I am Priyanka, and today we are talking to those people who want to avoid the August rush. So we usually see that people start to think about they want to do an MBA somewhere in June, and by August, they're overwhelmed with the entire MBA application process and they're drowning under it. So for this, the session is there, and this insightful discussion will be done by our favorite CEO, Jen. Hi, Jen.
I'm glad I'm the favorite.
Great. And also quickly, just a quick housekeeping note to everyone who is joining. If you have any questions that you want to put across for a MBA application process regarding this session, anything about MBA, and we would be happy to answer. So we'll keep monitoring your questions in the chat box and we'll take all of them towards the end. Okay. All right. So, Jay, you often see applicants, they're very worried about that their profile is not strong enough right now. Okay. So, if someone starts now, say 6 months before the round one deadlines hit in around September, how can they actually leverage, this extra time and make their profile stronger if that's currently weak?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is kind of like one of the biggest secrets is that if you start in Q1, January through March, um, you aren't just writing your application, you're actually, engineering your profile. And so you get a higher quality product at the very end because you've taken the time to build things with a lot of care and thought in the process. So, for people with low GPAs, you have time to maybe take an alternative transcript but course like HBX core or a course for a grade at Berkeley Extension online. Anything that maybe gives you a grade, like stats or finance, and usually it's quant that people are wanting to help boost their profile for. If you have some leadership gaps, this is also a great time for you to start doing some volunteering and get visible. And well, I'm sorry, get some high visibility. That's what I meant to say. And then you can, working at a nonprofit, or even if it's, joining the volunteer cell or group at your company, that can even be impressive to an admissions committee. So if you start now, you have 6+ months of this experience versus in August maybe having like not being able to really add anything because you're not going to have any value. The other thing that happens this early on is that you start shortlisting with intention. You're not just picking a school because of the ranking, you're really picking schools because you've done your research and you know that these schools are the right fit for you. You know the career pathways, the classes that you really want to take part of. And so I think that, that's the difference of like starting the school search this early too. And finally is, the testing part of everything. So if you're already starting to take your GMAT, GRE, or executive assessment, then you have time to not only take it once, but twice, maybe even 3 times if necessary. And just a caveat that it does, most people have to take the GMAT twice to kind of get above that 645 mark. So if you're not hitting it yet, that's okay. Like statistically, most everyone who goes through this process needs to take it twice to get above that mark. So a little bit of comfort there maybe throughout this process. I know that that's like kind of the hardest part. So you can take this time and really prep and focus on it and not be focusing on the application and GMAT prep at the same time. Yeah, so that's kind of my thought on this.
Thanks, Jen. So there are a lot of points I think that one can cover. Any part of the profile that is not strong enough, one can work on that with a given time. So to avoid the last minute rush. So this is where we are talking about the September intake, the round one intake. We also have candidates, Jennifer, here who have joined in, who wants to apply for January intake as well, the JTUB applications. So this is quarterly roadmap that we are talking about here. Is it like change? Does it change for them, or it is like entirely they are on a different clock? So how does that work?
Yeah, I would say that the, this is, it's a good question because it's different, right? It's a little bit more complex if you're thinking about January, um, January 27 versus January 28, right? Like we're talking about like either a shorter timeline or a much longer lead time. So, um, in the end, like it's the same process. You just kind of are changing the months, but given the fact that we are at the end of February, beginning of March, this is like you're kind of doing the diagnostics part of it, but the time that you're going to be executing is much shorter. So I would say for J term, I would say the execution phase actually starts at the end of Q1, like right now, end of February, beginning of March. And that's typically when round one applications are due for J term applications. I would say that Columbia is like the exception to that. Their application won't be published until May, mid-May, end of May, and will open only until October. So a very short window for that. And then also these schools tend to have a bit of like a rolling admissions type of nature. So if you're waiting longer, then there's a chance that you could be missing your chance to stand out in the crowd and get your spot early because you're really focused on the whole studying and researching the schools and things like that. So with J term, you really want to kind of hit the ground running right now. So beyond that, I would say that it really, I would say it's about strategic alignment. So you would plan like the fall, but you want to make everything 3 months earlier. And if you're applying for J term, I think it's worth a quick call for us to map it out for you to see how we can help you execute. So that's for J term. Priyanka, what's next?
So, okay, coming back to our September round one deadlines now. Practically, Jen, we know that the application portals of schools like Harvard, Wharton, they don't open until midsummer. So, how do we plan, working on the essays and requirements and everything before, we can even log into the application portal?
Yeah. So um, I would say like what you can do is definitely look at what the applications have been like this year. Um, I guess like what their verified prompts are, and then kind of hope that everything stays the same. For the most part, they do. I know that like just a couple of years ago, Harvard changed for the first time in a like for a very long time. They've changed things. I think that for the most part, schools are adding, and what I see continuing is adding like that video part. So at this point, during kind of like Q2 of this plan, April to June, you want to start your story mining and strategy. So look at the self reflection. Um, you don't want to necessarily start writing your story, but you want to start mapping it out, like the different life events, accomplishments, even failures, right? Like MBA is a little different where they're totally fine with failures and sometimes excited about the failures that you have. You start working on your resume. Eventually, it needs to get down to a one-page document, but at this point in time, you can have a longer one so that you can have everything in one place and then start like narrowing it down as you get closer. And then test scores, obviously, you want to make sure that you have your first attempt by May, maybe mid June. And then from there, you have the ability to retake if needed. If you don't hit your target by June, then you have 21 days to kind of study your weaknesses and then retake it in July. And the thing is like if your first attempt is in August, and I talk to a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm going to take it in July, August, and I'm like, that's so tight. You really don't have a lot of a buffer for like retake because you have no idea what can happen. One, there's a lot of people who their GMAT exam gets put like under review, and that takes some time to kind of clear up and go through. Or and I've had this like where somebody their first exam was going to be in August. They took it, but in the middle had kind of like a bit of a bathroom emergency and then had to wait, and like, it was just not great. And so again, like planning ahead really helps because you have no idea what might happen on those days.
True. I mean, yes, so one should have the buffer of, buffer days to give a second attempt. Great if you get that your target score in the first go, awesome. But you don't, you should have the time so that, you don't get stressed out with everything else that is part of the application. So, and it helps with the school, right? If you have the score.
Yeah. And it helps with that school list. Um, so you can kind of by late July, you'll have the score, and then you can start working on, what's a reach school, what's a target school, and what's a safety school. I think that that's kind of like one of those things like people really aren't sure, but it's kind of hard to nail it down if you don't have a score to kind of determine some of that. And I mean, the score is not everything. So I'm not saying that you need to eliminate things, but you can kind of see what your risk assessment is for the schools and say, like, okay, I know that I'm going to be a little bit lower on this side or a little bit higher. So, less likely of getting in or higher possibility of scholarship, and balancing that out in your school list.
Awesome. So basically, we want to be done with the GMAT somewhere by the time the summer heat hits us in July. Okay, and then maybe cool off and start with those essays work.
Oh, you're smooth, Priyanka. I love it. Yeah. So you just don't want to be that person that's sitting in the testing center in late August while everyone else is working on their third or fourth draft of their essays.
True that. Coming. So done. We're done with the GMAT. We are looking at the portals and everything. And now let's say we are sitting in July. The portals are open. What is the first thing that a candidate should do?
I think you want to first log into the system. A couple of caveats. I keep saying caveats, but things to look for is that first, when you log in and start your profile, they're going to ask you a couple of short answer questions, and sometimes there could be like 10 to 15 of them that are part of the entire application, and you want to make sure that you are on top of that, because I have clients that like they've decided to wait until the last minute, or until the last minute, and they are kind of at this disadvantage because they're speeding through those short answer questions, but sometimes they're just as valuable as the others. The other thing that will happen is that schools will have you check some boxes of what you're interested in. And this is why I would do this as soon as the portal opens for the application season, and check your boxes of like the club that you're interested in, or people that you're interested in speaking with. And that's going to help you with that research, because they're going to try to connect you, give you more information about that specific subject, or even webinars that are tailored to that. So you can get that stuff kind of early on versus having to dig for it later because you didn't take the time to fill out the application portal, just the initial part. You don't have to fill it all out. Okay, it also helps you with double checking what is required. So you can start making your checklist of like, okay, so I not only do I have to do a resume and 3 essays, but now like if I'm applying to like Kellogg and Sion, maybe Berkeley Haas, now I need to have a video essay, and I'm not ready for that. Or like maybe you have to do an organizational chart, and you don't want to be floundering at the last minute being like, oh my gosh, like how do I do this? And like what, like an art org chart, what do they want to see? And like really trying to do this all last minute. So Sorry, I feel like I can get really excited about this. The other thing is your recommenders. So you can put them into the system. They can have time to fill this out because recommenders are like herding cats, and they're a variable that you cannot control. You can do as much as you want to help them, but like you can't make them submit it for you. So the most time that you can give them is perfect, especially if there's holidays coming up and they might be on vacation around the application deadline. I usually tell clients to actually give the recommenders a deadline like 2 weeks before the real deadline, just so that there's a little bit more pressure to get it done earlier than later.
That's so a lot of points that one has to take care of, as Jen mentioned. The short questions, the short essays that are there in the application, equally important as the standard essay questions. And the recommender thing, yes, the senior people generally, your manager, your clients, etc. You cannot nudge them a lot. You cannot push them a lot. It's always good that you have given them enough time to write those recommendation letters, and also the tits bits parts of the application, the organization chart, the video essay. It's always good to be ready in advance. What is coming in your application. So we
Yeah.
have talked about Jen a bit about January intake as well. So there's something also called as early action deadlines, and some schools like Darden has that, Tuck has that. Can you tell us what are these early action deadlines, and what is the real strategy that people should follow if they're applying for them?
Yeah, so I would say that if if you're really interested in a school, if you're like, this is my number one, I get into this school, I'm done. I'm, packing my bags and ready to go next fall. Um, that's that's this like really exciting way to kind of one get in and get an early answer, but then two, also signal to the school that like that they're your number one choice, or you're really really interested in them. So I guess we call that the commitment factor. I know that there's some differences between them, and these have kind of changed a little bit over the years, so there's going to be different nuances for each school. But Duke, like Fuqua, they have a binding early action. So, which means like if you get admitted, you'll stop your application with every other school, commit to them, and then again, like see them in the fall. But there's some schools that do have early action that's not binding. Darden is one of these. And so you can actually choose whether you want it to be binding or not. And again, like this is that moment where you're telling Darden either they're your number one or they're in your top tier of schools that you're interested in. And then this also gives you some leeway ethically if you're like, okay, I would be really happy and excited to be admitted to Darden, but I'm also going to throw my hat in the ring for like Harvard or Stanford during round two. And if you get admitted to one of those schools, you can give up your spot at Darden and not feel like, oh, you know, I don't feel so great about this. um, because you made a commitment to the other school. Yeah. So the other thing that you should kind of consider is like, are you done with everything? Like, have you already checked all the things on your box? Have you worked on your resume, got your GMAT done, know the essay prompts and ready for them? Then absolutely, it's kind of a no-brainer to go ahead and use the early action to get this early evaluation of your profile and get an early answer. Um, who should skip it? I would say that it's people that are not exactly ready, right? Like you don't want to be rushed to submit it. Yes, it's great to submit during the early action period, but it also isn't great if it's a poorly constructed application. So, kind of balance that out with you know, with what you want to accomplish and what you want to present to the adcom. And I think like here's the other caveat. Like let's say that your GMAT score or GPA, or you have something that's a little bit lower on the compared to the class profile for these schools, there is an advantage. That's, the great thing about early action is they say like, oh, you really love us. Let us evaluate your profile early. And so this is your time to get in front of those schools, and hopefully get the admit that maybe you might not get in round 1 or 2 because more people have applied with better profiles.
Oh, okay. So I mean, I guess apply only when your application is strong enough and you're confident about it. Just don't rush into apply in an early round because it's early action. Okay. But in case, as Jen said, it's a no-brainer. If everything you th think is at par with what you want to expect your application to, then go ahead and take the advantage of it. Before we go, any other surprises, Jennifer, that you think one needs to prepare in advance when they apply for MBA applications? Anything that you can think of?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but those video essays, I feel like sometimes they're a surprise. And you didn't even know that it was coming for you, and you're like, oh, I didn't prepare for this. So sometimes schools will have like a video interview. And so usually it's put on by Kira Talent, and they will give you a prompt. You have 30 seconds to think and then 60 seconds to speak. And sometimes you actually have to write. So, be ready for that. We actually on our website have like a bank of what the typical questions are for all these schools that have previously had these video interviews. So you can definitely study and be prepared for them, and not be blindsided. And then we referenced this again earlier, is that org chart for MIT. Again, it's, they're wanting to see what your reporting line is, like how far are you from the CEO, where are you structured within your organization. And so it could be extremely complicated, or it could be very simple. If you're an entrepreneur and you're the CEO and you really don't have anybody reporting to you, it could just be you. So you want to make sure that you can kind of gut check that, make sure everything looks good. The other thing is sometimes people are surprised that they have to take an English proficiency exam. Many schools really do accept most countries where you're learning in English, but some of them don't. I think like Cornell, there's a couple other ones that even though you've learned in English, you still have to take an English proficiency exam as the official language of that country is something else. So, check those. Don't just assume that you don't have to do it.
Right. And as you mentioned, especially for the language proficiency test, because if you see it during the last minutes of the application, the test centers, they get fully booked. People book their slot way in advance, so it might be difficult to get a slot. So it's good that you check these things in advance, your eligibility, what all tests you need to have before you apply for the school. So that, again, avoid rush, avoid that August panic. Okay. Thank you so much, Jane. This one has been very insightful. And let's take up the questions. We have some already here in the chat box, and we would take them one by one. So we have first question from D. He or she, I'm sorry, I do not know who is. So they are asking that. Could you please explain one more time how can one compensate on low GPA?
Yeah, so if you have a lower GPA, what the school wants to do is just confirm that you're going to be a strong candidate for the classroom. Can you handle the rigor of the program? And if your GPA isn't representing that, you can supplement it by taking additional classes for grades that are going to help with your overall GPA. But then also show them that you're ready for the rigor of like an accounting or a finance class or a statistics class. So you can take those courses. Some people decide to take the HBX core for a grade, which is fun. And so you can do that, or you can take courses like MBA math. I will say that MBA math is good, but the schools know them. Actually, some schools require you to complete MBA math prior to starting the program, like as part of their like orientation, boot camp, get ready. So they know that MBA math is kind of like an open book test, and you can take it as many times as you need. So it's much more of like, I went through the process of like doing this. I know that my GPA is lower. I'm acknowledging that. And here's how I want to kind of help compensate for that. The other thing is that a higher GMAT or GRE score is another place to kind of, again, validate your readiness for this for the school. So if your GMAT score is mediocre, your GPA is a little lower, but you have high schools on your list, then you really want to figure out what you can do. And sometimes that's a conversation with the AdCom, because like some schools are like, okay, yeah, just take a class. Other schools are like, no, we want to see this class and this class. So it can be a conversation with an AdCom, whether that's, a coffee chat, an MBA fair, or even an email, to be able to get that verified information of like, okay, this is what the AdCom wants to see from me.
Great. So yeah, and GPA is something you would know beforehand that this is the score, you would know it's low or not. So now would be a good time to take those alternate tests that Jen is suggesting to make up that low score. Coming to the next question, we have a question from Jivika. Hi, Jivika. She's asking, when's the latest you recommend taking the last attempt of GMAT GRE for round one to adequately focus on the actual applications?
I prefer for people to be done by May, early June. Like that's really like the best time frame, because then you have enough time to do that school research, networking, etc., to be really focused on this is what the application is looking for, what I need to research, and how I need to go forward. So take that with you. Um, Ideally, you'll be done before April. It looks like, oh, you're back. Yay.
Yes.
Um, so the next question is from Shivar. Let's say someone applies to the J term and not doesn't get in. Does it affect their chances in any way if they reapply for the next August intake or the next year's J term? Also, how's the answer here different for USB schools and European? So I think like the biggest thing about reapplication is what has changed. If the AdCom told you, and this could vary, like either one, you got denied, or you got denied with an interview, then the AdCom is going to say what happened or what's changed from when you got the denial, when we said it wasn't a good fit, to now. And like if it's waitlist, it's likely just like space. Sometimes like they're telling you, if you're on the wait list, that we like you, but we're still weighing our options with other people and not sure if you're the right fit, etc. So they want to know what's changed between then and now. So that's really what will impact your reapplication. Maybe not necessarily timeline, but that. So when we talk about like if you applied to the J term, for like INSEAD has the both intakes. So if you applied in J term, didn't get admitted, then you can apply. Oops, sorry, I almost spilled my drink. Then you can apply the following fall immediately after that. They're okay with it. Most schools are okay with that. There are a few that maybe have an exception to that if they have a J term. Columbia, if you applied for J term, you can't just turn around and apply for the following, for the next start. So if you're applying for January 27, and you don't get admitted, which is anyways, so if you're applying for January 27 and don't get admitted, you can't apply for fall 27 because they're the same application cycle. So that's, excuse me. So that's kind of the difference there. I hope that answers your question. Happy for follow-ups.
So I think it's all about the reapplication idea, Jen, because when you reapply, whether it is these immediate reapply with the person talking about, or maybe applying after an year, it's about what changed in your profile, why we did not select you and what changed that, no, now we should select you. So that is a very important point, Jen, that you have shared here. And I think that should help Shiva with the query. And yes, as Jen said, if you have more questions, you can schedule a call with Jen. Here's the calendar link, and we'll also send you across the link. Jennifer, can you please copy paste also the link in the chat box? So
Yeah,
in case anybody wants to, just have that link with them quickly, they can go ahead and schedule a call.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Let's take the next question. It's from Sage Fried. I'm sorry if not pronouncing the name correctly. So it's asking that does Aringo support other kind of applications like Master of Advanced Management, LGO, or PhDs, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Priyanka, you got that. Like Priyanka is really awesome because she can kind of help people with that beginning part of like, yes, we can help you with this. And so, yeah, we help everybody from everywhere. We help with undergrad, online MBA, part-time MBA, executive MBA. We do a lot of PhDs as well as other master's programs. So yes, we're happy to help on many levels.
So bring about your profile and we would be happy to help. Next question we have from Harshal. Hi, Harshal. Hi, Jennifer and Priyanka. Who, according to you, should apply for the early action and who absolutely shouldn't?
Um, I feel like we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I would say that early action is somebody who's ready and somebody who really wants to be part of that school. If you are like, I got that admit from Darden, but I'm not really excited about it. I won't go. Then don't waste your time. Don't waste their time because they're giving you extra effort to be able to help you get that early decision. So I think like that's the thing is if you're mediocre about a school and you're like, I don't know, then I wouldn't, it's not worth it to have an admit if you're really not going to take advantage of it. And I think like also if your application's not ready.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. It helps, I guess. Next, we have question from Ibrahim. Hi, Ibrahim. If there is an employment gap for 1 year occurred, how should the candidate address it in the application?
Yeah, most schools in their application form ask you if you have a gap of more than 3 months, they want to know why. And so this is your opportunity. You can do it in a couple of spots. One is if it asks in the application, it gives you a space, then you explain it there, or you use the optional essay. And what you want to do is tell them about that. If there was an illness, if there was something else, like let's say we've had people who tried to launch their own business during that time and it just didn't work out. So they technically don't have employment, even though they were working on the project. Then there's that. So there's a lot of different things. I have a client right now. She moved to another country, and when she moved, she had to wait to get a work permit, and so that took her out of the workforce for a couple of months. I'll say that schools, if they see that break, they also want to know how you've been productive, unless it was a severe illness where you're not able to do anything else. But they want to know how you've been enriching yourself during that break as well.
Okay. Yeah, so just explain what the reason is and how you have utilize your time during that gap. Next question we have from Siddharth. Hi, Siddharth. So, what would be a lower GPA according to the MBA applications, and like at what point one should definitely take the courses that you have mentioned?
Yeah, so I would say look at the class profile for the schools that you're most interested in. When it's half a point less, that might be a good time period or a good, indicator that you should probably do something to boost your profile to be competitive. Again, like if you blow it out of the water with your GMAT and have like a 705 or higher, then maybe that's not a big deal. But, like if you feel like, my exam score is kind of mediocre, my GMAT or my GPA is a little bit lower, what can I do? And I think like that's where you're at. I would say if your GPA is technically like below a 3.0 for sure. but like 3.2 maybe, and not great grades in specific classes. Again, like we can always do a one-off conversation about your specific transcript. The other thing that I would say is there are exceptions to the rule. So MBA programs, while many of them are based in the US, they do have applicants from all over the globe, and understand that not all GPAs are created equally. And like maybe in the US, it's a lot easier to get a 4.0 or even like a 3.9, whereas maybe in India, like a CGPA of a 9.1 could be the class topper, or even an 8.9, right? Like just depends on the class. Or maybe you're at 65%. I've had clients that are like at 65% in an Indian bachelor's degree, and they're like in the top 5%. So sometimes, like if you're still like a really high performer for your class, maybe you give them some reference of like the reference point of like I'm at top 5% of my class, and then they look at that and they say like, oh, 65% is not what I thought it was. There's a whole like psychological element to that too. So we usually try to employ some strategies to how to market or talk about that as well.
Okay, so yeah, so yes, take the test if your GPA is low, what from what Jen had mentioned, and if not, you know it's not that bad because of the hard marking and everything that is there in your college. So mention your percentile. That helps. It certainly helps in your, you can do it in your resume itself. Coming back to the another question we have from Henry, does applying in early action increase or decrease or does not affect scholarship chances?
So
We
early
have a
action,
lot of
absolutely.
questions from early action.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, maybe we should do a separate topic on that. But early action definitely increases your chances. So the caveat is like that you are saying this is my school. If you admit me, I'm happy to drop my applications with everywhere else. So they know that you are dedicated to them. And so they want to reward that and retain you, even maybe if you signed a binding contract or binding acceptance. They want you to stay, right? They put the effort in, you put the effort in. Let's just make the most of this. And so there's definitely higher chances of scholarship during early action.
thanks, Jay. We have another question from D. What if the university does not allow to take the additional courses in order to increase the academic credits? I mean, we only allowed to take 120 credits.
Oh, okay. So your specific university doesn't allow you to take more. You can take classes outside of your university from a school like UC Berkeley Online Extension. You could take them from an accredited, university. It could be online, in person. I've had clients do it at like a community college. It doesn't have to be from the same university. When This is like in the weeds. Sorry. I love that Priyanka is always my translator for everything I have to share. But when an MBA program gets your transcripts, they're going to do all sorts of their own calculations. And so if you have a transcript outside of your degree transcript, then they're going to add that to the GPA calculations, right? So they want to look at that good, bad, or ugly, right? Like, so let's say that you started at one school, didn't do so well, and you transferred. They want those transcripts too. You studied abroad, they want those transcripts. They want all transcripts. So they're going to put it all together and have their own rubric of how they're judging your academic qualification. So that's how you can get those extra credits and boost your GPA, but not necessarily your GPA at your school.
Okay, I think that helps, and that's a very unique question. I would recommend Dee, that you have a conversation with Jen on one-on-one. Then we can, really answer your question in more detail. That what specifically you can do with your profile, and we can recommend, in a concise way, accordingly. Also, one question that we have, Jennifer, is about the organization chart. People also want to know that this organization chart that MIT asked for, how does it look like? I mean, does it need to be approved from the HR of these of the company, etc., something like that, or it needs to be in a certain way that needs to be prepared?
No, so it's not something that HR has to approve. I mean, obviously I wouldn't lie because there are background checks that the school does once you're admitted. Um, but I'll see if I could bring it up really quickly and I'll share it on my screen. MIT shares kind of like a sample, but this should help. Let me change what I'm sharing. Give me 1 second to stop that. Priyanka, you can go ahead and maybe answer other questions while I get it set up.
All right. But I think we have that's all the questions. We also had one candidate asking about that, what if okay, so we can see the chart just in case. So you can see how the chart should be there for the MIT. Another question that I was asking you, Jen, was this, that so we talked about doing courses, we talked about doing some leadership work, for a weak profile if we do not have that. But if somebody does those things right now, or if starts something like this right now, the impact would come in a month or two times. Okay, so with the adcom will see that as the genuine attempt, or it will like check in the box kind of thing. He's just doing it for the application. So can you just talk about that a bit as well? It does not look like that. The volunteering work is just done for the application or something like that.
Yeah, so for volunteer work or like joining groups, organizations, etc., I would say that it needs to be connected to who you are and what's important to you. And if you can, tie it to your story, and have some sort of string that will help it kind of connect together, that's the important part. Uh, if you just join something that feels like it's out of left field, doesn't really connect, then that's when the adcom starts thinking that maybe this is just for the MBA application and not 100% altruistic. So an easy way for me to like share this would be, let's say that you did some tutoring while you were in your bachelor's degree. An easy way to kind of continue that is to start tutoring, or volunteering academically, now. And then you can kind of talk about, like, I always thought about education, and access to education was really important. And so that's kind of what drove me as, a professional, et cetera. That's why I want to be in ed tech, right? Like, so find something that connects to where you want to be or what's really important to you. It again, like, it doesn't have to be like that you like are volunteering at like an orphanage and like saving kids or anything like that. It can be like, I'm really interested, like I really love dogs. And so I work at the dog rescue. Or again, like maybe you want to do the CSR, volunteer coordination within your actual organization. Again, like it doesn't have to be like something so like lofty,
Huge.
charitable. It can be, what they're really looking for is leadership and passion. And so if you can help connect the dots to that, you're in a good spot.
That answers, I guess, the query, that one, that it should connect the dots. It should tie. It should be able to tie with your story, what you're saying, what your interest, your passion lies in, and there's something to do with the same, and not just volunteer. Okay, volunteering in a big NGO. Better than that, take initiatives in what you are joining. Take leadership roles there, and that would be more impactful. All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Jane. This has been an incredibly detailed session, and we covered a lot of points. I guess the biggest takeaway is that the application portal is, it's not the fish. It's not, it's not the starting line. It's the finishing part of your application. So one should not wait there. Start now to get the most of the application.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Priyanka. What I'll do is after this chat, I will send out an email with the presentation or with a link to this video. So if you want to go back, I'll also include the chart that you saw during the presentation, so that you can, kind of get an idea of what your timeline is going to look like and start, tailoring it to you.
Yes, and also in the same email, you will also get the calendar link of Jen. Okay, you want to get a one-on-one call with her. You want to have your personalized action plan for your MBA application process. How you what the timeline that you should follow specifically. Jen can help you devise that as well. So it's a complimentary session, and you can take the most of it. Also, I want to give everyone the heads up of our next session as well. So we want to help you with and talk more about the MBA networking strategy. This is like a favorite topic for Jen as well. So Jen, can you also give a snapshot of it, what we'll be talking about in that session and how it will help?
Yeah. So in that session, it's really all about why our school. So, and again, like this is something I'm so excited about, passionate about is, you want that school to feel special, that you're not just applying to them because of their ranking or, like, oh, it's Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. Of course, everybody wants to be there, but why? And so how do you connect the dots to them? And so that's, what we're going to kind of dive into is why doing this early is going to be helpful, what you need to take from those conversations, what kind of questions you need to ask, and then how to find those people to make that connection and get those answers you need.
Awesome. That would help. And in case anybody who is attending the session, in case you want any session to be on a particular topic, you want to have more details, you can let us know and we'll happy to conduct that too. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you soon in our next session. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you.